Hello, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat, a show trying to make the world safe for ADHDers. I am a clinical psychologist. Uh, for a very long time, I've been a neuropsychologist and psychologist, and most of my time in private practice, most of that working with ADHD families and uh, doing evaluations and treatment and all that sort of stuff. And in addition, if that wasn't enough experience, I also have two ADHD kids, one of each flavor, one inattentive, one hyperactive, and well, a little bit more of a challenge, shall we say. Okay, so back in those days, my audio engineer says we are good to go. Anyway, just back when my kids first started being born, ADHD wasn't even a diagnosis. ADD wasn't a diagnosis. Hyperactive reaction to childhood was the diagnosis, which is a mouthful and not very descriptive and implies that it goes away when they get to be adults, which is far from the truth. Okay, based on all this, having, all those years watching other people dealing with their ADHD kids and then having my own to deal with when I came home, I have some recommendations that I think will make it easier for you, a little easier anyway. I mean, no kidding. There's no way of describing what it's like to have an ADHD kid to somebody who's just got all those neurotypical children, but it's a challenge. Okay. And one of the things you've got to get with, I mean, there's a whole bunch to learn, but one of the assumptions you've got to make is that in any situation, the thing in that situation that you have the most control over is yourself. So, man, this is not a blame game. This is just the attitude you have to have in entering this situation. Because I guarantee you, if you go in hot and heavy or screaming commands, a bad situation is going to get a lot worse. Okay, so some things you need to check about. First of all, is the evaluation adequate? And there is probably no mental health provider in the United States, at least, that won't say, "Oh yeah, I can do ADHD evals." But trust me, there are a lot of people who don't know what they're doing with that sort of thing, and so you get garbage in, garbage out. It's just you don't exactly know what you're dealing with. An ideal evaluation tells you a lot about your child's strengths and weaknesses. You need to know the strengths because that's what you can build on. You need to know the weaknesses because that's what you've got to correct for. And the more you know and the more confidence you have in that, the better off you'll be all the way along. So a good evaluation, make sure you get a good one. Get somebody who's recommended, somebody who's, on the CHAD list, although I've never been on that myself, but it's, the things that you need to do to get you a reasonably good evaluation. And the other next thing you need to look at and ask yourself honestly, are you open to all the possible treatment modalities? And I'm basically well, it's funny because the most effective way of treating ADHD is with medication, but the treatment that has the most people going, "Oh my God, not my kid," that's also medication. Okay, I'm sure it may be because most of us have seen the movies about speed freaks and that sort of stuff, and we think, "Oh, I can do that to my kid." Well, the deal with medication, and again, the nice thing that's happened recently in the last 20 years, that kind of recently, is that we have stimulant medication, which were the first ones that anybody used. And, used to be Ritalin every 4 hours, and that meant there was a long line at the nurse's office at noontime in every elementary school in America. And stimulants, they are effective. Now we have long acting stimulant medication, and then that works really well for most people, till 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So, but you've got to be open to it. You've got to understand it and not be all. Just know what you're talking about. Do the research. Know what you're talking about when you're having concerns. The interesting thing is, kids who are on stimulant medication are less likely to abuse substances than people who are not on stimulant medication, or with ADHD, of course. Okay, it's an interesting finding in the research, and it's just what stimulant medication does in the brain is make the brain behave more like a neurotypical brain. It increases the levels of dopamine and norepinephrine, which is, the biggie as far as what causes ADHD problems. And as a matter of fact, sometimes it has a change effect that lasts even after, if the medication is discontinued. But basically, you have to be aware of that, but do it from a scientific base. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of research. Get on board, AI it, or Google it, whatever. We can't get away from AI anyway. If you Google it, you'll get AI as the first entry in most tests you do. But anyway, is your evaluation good, and how open are you to all the treatment modalities? And if you're closed off to one, just make sure you're doing it based on logic and science. Okay, it's not a religious question. It's not. It's not a legal question. It is just a scientific track. You got this condition, you take this medication. You got diabetes, you take insulin. It's no more complicated than that. And try to keep it simple and not make it any more complicated for yourself. Okay, and bringing us to the main thing you have to remember constantly. ADHD is a neurological condition. It is based on differences in the structure and functioning and neurochemistry of the brain. They're different. Okay, it's not like they're disabled, and can't coordinate or something like that. It's that it's a total different kind of brain, a different kind of way of thinking. And what that means is that a lot of times when you're thinking, he's being belligerent, and it's a neurologic condition. He's not being willfully disobedient. He's not being, it's just, he's not doing it willfully, okay, or she. I say he because most of the ones that are hyperactive tend to be males, okay, and those are the ones that'll give you the most interesting moments, I guess we could say. Although my inattentive one got caught up when she got to be an adult or near adult. So it is a neurologic condition. You have to keep reminding yourself of that, okay? And they have real weaknesses in some things. I never had called it this before, but I've heard people doing different presentations talk about time blindness. Well, it's a little more descriptive, I guess. But I mean, basically, ADHDers have lousy time with scheduling and that sort of thing because they just don't track the passage of time the way neurotypicals do. They, Oh yeah, I can do that paper, a 500-page paper in an hour tonight. Right. Okay. So they got that, and they've got the working memory thing, and working memory is sort of I used to call it the etch a sketch, but that's kind of trivializes it. It's real important. It's the kind of thing where you try and keep something in your mind till you get the job done. To you, hey, while you're upstairs, would you bring me down a pair of socks? You know, and you go up there and you do whatever you were going to do up there, and you come down and you don't have the socks, and that causes problems. Probably the adults have more troubles. I told you to stop and get bread and milk on the way home. That kind of thing. That's working memory being a problem. And organization and executive functioning in general are issues as well. Those are not killers. You can learn to compensate for them, but that's because of the neurology of the situation. And it's not that they're being willful. Another carryover from that is that punishment is not only not appropriate, it doesn't work. If you punish your child, your ADHD child, for not doing something he said he was going to do and then never quite got around to doing it, you're punishing for a neurologic condition. And not only does that not change anything, it actually makes things worse, because that causes his dopamine levels to go down even lower. And you're going to have even more problems than you started. This is not that you don't set limits, but there's a way you have to do it with ADHD kids that's different from somebody who's just seeing how much he or she can get away with. Okay, that's the easy. Well, I don't know if it's the easy stuff, but it's some of the big issues. Okay, punishment doesn't work very well. ADHD kids, I always say this. I say this every week, I think, get on average 70 critical comments every day. And it doesn't help. Okay? It's just, oh, you forgot to do, why did you, I told you, all that stuff. They're trying, okay? But they have problems doing things that come easily to some other people. That's just the way it is. And then, okay, we get down to some of the biggies. You need to be aware of how your family functions. Okay, now, ADHD is highly heritable. That is, it passes down from parents to kids, okay? So if you have an ADHD child, it is highly likely that either you or your spouse, or perhaps both of you, have ADHD, or if you don't have outright overt ADHD, you have a bunch of relatives that have it, and that will make well, that'll make Thanksgiving interesting. I'll give you that. But you need to know that, okay? Because that means if you're the neurotypical one, that means you've got a couple of people to have to balance out, and help out, honestly. I mean, it's not easy. If you've got, I remember I had the mother in the family, and she had 4 kids, and her husband only managed to graduate from college because it was a long time ago, and it took him over 6 years to get a bachelor's degree. And and all 4 kids had ADHD, and she was the only neurotypical one in the family. And of course, like all neurotypicals that married into ADHD families, she was a little bit compulsive. So for her, the organization and the structure and all that stuff was terribly important, and nobody else was paying attention to that. But you need to know that stuff about your family. Okay. If your spouse has ADHD, there are certain situations where it's probably better that you handle them than that your ADHD spouse handle them. And a lot of times that's, when people are out of control and all that sort of thing. But, you have to evaluate that individually. People have a little bit of ADHD or they have a whole bunch of it. And perhaps your ADHD partner only has a little bit and has learned to compensate for it. Okay, great. And then, of course, the hardest one of all is to evaluate yourself. And okay, well, things you need to know is, well, first of all, do you have ADHD too? Second of all, what is your favorite bad emotion? And that's real important, but people don't think of that. They think, oh, I just have all the emotions all the time. And just, but no, there's one usually, sometimes it's two, but mostly is one that is your favorite bad emotion. And a lot of times, for men, it's most likely anger. That kind of thing. Manly men and all that. But, it's everybody has their own, and some people were trained, and it's partly a result of training. If your mom had anxiety, probably some of the kids will have anxiety. If dad had anger problems, probably some of the kids will have anger problems. It's a combination of training, observation, and sometimes it's the judgments you make yourself. The big issue is to be aware of it and to be compensating for it. The people have different emotions in different situations. I mean, even in POW camps, it's different. Some people will just be plugging along, no big deal. Some people will be depressed and can't move. Some will be ready to kill something at almost any moment. And they're all in the same situations theoretically. And that's, you look at, for most of us, we'll never see a POW camp, I hope. But for, most of us see people in traffic, when we're driving, especially if we're having to drive during prime traffic times, like when people are getting off of work and trying to get away from the job they hate to home that they're not much happier with. Anyway, but you see, you see some people are stuck in a traffic jam and they're angry. Their blood vessels are sticking out and their face is turning red and they're pounding on the steering wheel. And then you have somebody right next to them and then the other next lane and they're having a panic attack. I know. And then there's probably somebody in there who's having a depressive episode. Or somebody's feeling guilty because they should have started going to where they're going earlier than they did. Excuse me. That happens all the time, and you can see it all the time. Go to a shopping mall and look around. If anybody goes to malls anymore, I don't know if they are, but you get people who are angry, who are anxious, who are depressed, who are guilty, feeling all doing this theoretically at least the same thing. And that's one of the things you have to be aware of is that emotions are under our control, but we have, all of us, developed habits that make us get excuse me, that make us get our favorite bad emotion in a situation that doesn't necessarily call for it. And you need to be aware of that. And you need to know that, before you start dealing with your ADHD child and he's or she's in a highly emotional state, you don't want to be going in there and showing them how to do it worse. You want to be able to calm yourself down, get into control, and we will talk about that more next time. And well, we're right at the magic hour, and so I'm going to terminate this now. For those of you who are watching this on as a podcast, I'm going to be switching the show to Thursdays at early in the morning, 7 or 8 in the morning. So you can catch it there. It's I only started doing them on Sundays because I got bored during a Washington Redskins football game and pushed the red camera on my cell phone and did 15 minutes and thought, hey, that was kind of fun. So, but I've been told by everybody who knows anything more than I do about podcasting and so on, that I should get them all in the same place. So we'll try that out. If any of you have any serious concerns about that, let me know, and maybe I'll change my mind. But right now, that's what we're going with. Okay, my website is terrygingrassphd.com. You can sign up for coaching on that site, and we're starting to add some new stuff pretty soon. I know I've been threatening that for a while, but we're really going to do it now. And I almost made a political comment, but I'm not going to do that. Okay, we will catch you next time. Remember, ADHDers have unique minds. They have talents and abilities. They are not technically handicapped. They have problems that make it harder for them in a society that's totally structured for neurotypicals. The old farmer's economy as opposed to the hunter's economy. Okay, catch you next time.